Hey friend, welcome to my podcast, The Fit Soul. I'm your host, Amy Ramsey. In this podcast, we will be discussing soul-filled strategies to unleash your confidence, increase your energy, and all the things healthy lifestyle. If you're a Christian woman who is ready to reach your God-given potential, walk worthy of your calling with abundant joy and energy, girlfriend, you are in the right spot. I mean, you only have one life to live. You might as well maximize it. Buckle in, and thanks for listening. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for joining me here today, and excited to talk about continuing the conversation on health span, lifespan, aging powerfully, and specifically how to lose body fat and weights with nutrition in mind. And I have a special guest.
Hi, everybody. Good to be back again.
Welcome, Randy.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. This is a good way to spend my Sunday afternoon on the couch in our bedroom doing these podcasts. I enjoy it so much. It's wonderful to have this opportunity.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you for being agreeable, and everybody loves you. So if you are new to my podcast, this is Dr. Randy Ramsey, and he is my sweetheart, my husband, and he is 60 years old. I am 50 years old, and we are both very passionate about aging powerfully and with strength. This is something that both of us, really our entire adult lives, have committed ourselves to. And we hope today, our goal for this series of podcasts is to give you practical tips, practical strategies where you can implement these things today, right now, and improve your health.
That's right. And we've talked recently, both Amy and I, and Amy last week by herself, about improving and lengthening health span, which is the amount of time you're living that you're very healthy and active and disease-free. Some of the components of that are nutritional. Some of them are strength and movement. Some of them are mindset. And today, we're going to talk about the nutritional components of increasing health span. And we're fortunate and honored to have a very special qualified guest today. She is a certified integrative health coach. She's a certified high performance coach. She's a certified personal trainer. She has over 25 years in the health and wellness space, both in person and online. It's my wonderful, beautiful wife, Amy Ramsey. And welcome. We're going to turn it over to you to talk about the nutritional components of aging powerfully and increasing health span.
Oh, well, thank you for that lovely welcome to my podcast.
You're so very kindly welcome, of course.
Oh, my goodness.
You're the most qualified one of us, particularly to talk about nutrition. As you know what my nutritional habits are, they're not nearly as good as yours.
Oh, well, what's really interesting, so we're recording this podcast on a Sunday afternoon. That's what works for the recording schedule for this, although it goes live on Tuesday. And we went to church this morning, and we're at a restaurant meeting some friends for lunch, going back and forth about what should we talk about on this podcast. And this is really interesting. So the waitress apparently was kind of listening to our conversation, and we wrapped it up. As we were wrapping up my notes and putting them away, I said, Randy, I think we just need to keep this simple. Not go into the great details and the depths and lots of science and all this stuff. And this waitress said, don't do that. It's so confusing. Because I said, people won't do anything. If it's too much information and it's too technical, then what happens is they think, I'll get to it. Because I've done that a million times. How about you? Oh, I'll get to it. When I get that data or that measurement or buy this device or get that meal plan or whatever, I will do it when. And this lady chimed in and she was like, yeah, no, I can't do that. I get overwhelmed. And so our goal today is honestly to keep this pretty simple, but with some tools and some ideas just to encourage you on your health journey. Probably some of this is just going to be a straight up reminder. You probably already know most of these, but you know what? Common knowledge is not common practice. And the more that we listen and the more that we start to implement, even on a smaller level, the greater results that we will have. So that being said, we're going to keep this pretty simple, but I am going to ask you to chime in too.
Certainly. I'll be happy to. One thing that we've both learned a long time ago, looking at diet and exercise, is you can't out-exercise a poor diet. Mm-hmm. And 80% of our health is likely related to what we put in our bodies. Obesity, the obesity epidemic, or pandemic probably it is affecting 67 to 71% of Americans, depending on who you listen to. That's people that are overweight or obese. And the issue with this is so many of these chronic health problems that are killing Americans these days, hypertension, stroke, cardiovascular disease, hyperlipidemia, high triglycerides, and
high blood pressure.
I said that one.
You said that
one.
Yeah.
And diabetes can all be traced back in the current modern age to poor diet and obesity. So it's a big deal. And the more you can learn about it and get it under control, the better off your life is going to be and the longer your health span is going to be.
Yes. Let's break that down just a little bit, though, because I think sometimes we hear those facts and eyes roll back in the head. It's like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? So obesity and being overweight and being normal weight, your doctor will tell you this is your BMI. And your BMI is, it's one of those measurements that some people don't give a lot of credence to, but there's a bell curve for it. So if your BMI, your body mass index, which is where they take your height and your weight, and it goes on a scale, it's right, height and weight, and there's a scale, you can Google it, and when you go to the doctor, they'll tell you what your BMI is. But if it's 20 to 25, that's going to be considered normal, healthy, okay? 25 to 30 is considered overweight. And then 30, actually to 35, I believe, is considered obese, and over 35 is considered morbidly obese. And we live in a very sensitive society, a very tender culture, especially when it comes to discussing weight. So there is zero fat shaming here. This is just nuts and bolts and numbers, and this is to increase our longevity. So knowledge is power. It's important that you know where you are so you can have the proper goals. And one thing that I see with the women that I coach a lot of women, most of them are in midlife, and they're frustrated. They feel stuck because perimenopause, menopause, women get this belly fat. And the things that they used to do are no longer working. The ways that they used to exercise are no longer working. So what I want to start with real quickly is that this is a very complex topic. And all we're going to dive into today is the nutritional component. Sleep is the number one thing you can do for fat loss, and stress and where are your cortisol levels, your adrenals are crucial, especially when it comes to that belly fat, balancing out your hormones. So there's so many moving pieces to this, and exercise, of course. But for the most part, we're just going to talk about nutrition and keep it on that. So the first thing that I find that most women need help with, and I would say probably this is men and women, is they're not eating nearly enough protein.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Across the board, yeah. And so the tip number one is to prioritize protein. When I work with women one-on-one, we track this. And I think that tracking this is really key to helping you get it on target, because most women are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I needed that much protein. But protein, there's so many benefits to having the right amount of protein in your body. Number one, it produces satiety. It's going to help you build muscle. We lose muscle very quickly at our age. And so this is the building block of muscle. And we were going into a lot of nitty gritty detail when we were writing this out, but let's just keep it simple.
Okay.
Aim for 30, at least, listen, if you're just starting, at least 30 grams per meal 3 times a day. At least 30 grams 3 times a day. But I'm going to say 30 to 50 is probably a little bit more accurate.
I think so. It depends on whether you're man or woman, depends on your size at the time. The bigger you are, the more protein you need. Yes.
And so the thing with protein is that it's easy to get. Quality matters here. The quality of your protein is very, very important. We've used ButcherBox for years, and it's a subscription where you can order your meat. I find that the meats, I think it's prettier than what I find at my local grocery store, and it's just easier. It's a subscription. It's worked for us, but make sure you're getting quality meats. But here's just some easy proteins to think about. Eggs, steak, ground turkey, ground beef, fish. We eat a lot of fish. Yogurt.
Chicken, we eat a lot.
Oh,
of chicken.
Yeah. How did I miss chicken? Yeah, I
That's
eat a
your
lot
favorite.
of. Yeah, I know. I eat a lot of chicken. I actually really enjoy chicken. But when you really focus on prioritizing protein, it's going to help you feel full, more satiated. And I think it's important to focus on eating your protein as much as possible.
Is there order you should eat? Should you eat protein first during your meals?
When you're building your plate, round out, the first thing you should be thinking about is your protein. How do I do that with building my meal? Yes. And I will say this too. I think it's important to try to front load your protein as much as possible. What's really difficult is when you get to, let's say you've been busy or you just haven't paid attention, you get to the end of the day and you're focusing on counting that getting it, let's just keep it easy, round numbers, 100 grams of protein in for the day. And you only had 30. It's very hard to go in and get the protein in at the capacity which your body can process it in a healthy manner. So I recommend making sure you front load the protein. There's a lot of science around fasting, intermittent fasting, and there's a lot of backlash with intermittent fasting. We're not here to discuss that really on this particular podcast, but just know if you've always done it that way, it could be detrimental to your hormones, and I think it's good to shake things up a little bit. Now, that being said, one thing that I do, and most of my clients do, we do supplement with some protein powder. I think eating it first is important, and then I do supplementation with I'll take a scoop of protein powder and I'll mix it with Greek yogurt. I've got 2 that I love. It's grass-fed whey, and it is low calorie, but it gives me that protein. It's delicious. And so I'll supplement with a solid, my little snack in the afternoon is solid, and it just keeps me full, and I'm not snacking on crap, which is what a lot of people end up doing, and it's a lot of calories, it's expensive. So tip number 1, prioritize protein.
I just want to clarify, when you're saying front load the protein, does that mean front load it in the day or front load it during each meal?
Yes.
And yes.
And yes.
Okay.
Yes and yes. One of the things that I do find, and we're going to talk about this later, that where my clients are having really massive success is learning what their body needs, their midlife body needs. What used to work is no longer working. And what happens with food, we get away from knowing how many calories that we're consuming. Most people overeat and they don't realize they are. And that's not true for everybody. Some of the ladies that I work with are chronically undereating and their bodies are left in a starvation mode and their body's hanging on to fat. And it's really difficult for them to inch up to where their caloric intake should be. So understanding and knowing what your body needs is not as easy as just Googling it, throwing it in a formula. We use a very specific approach to the midlife body. It's based on history. It's based on where the hormones are. It's also based on what type of metabolizer you are. But again, we're keeping this pretty simple. Eat your protein. Eat your protein. All right. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
I just wonder if you're talking about caloric intake, is there any basic rule of how many calories one should be taking in during the day?
It literally depends. It depends on what the goals are. I get really concerned, and as should anyone, when you see a 1,200 a day calorie diet. That is very unhealthy for you, but it wrecks your metabolism. I have one client, and I absolutely love her. She reached out to me. And she said, she's in her 70s actually. And she said, I have done every diet known to man. I have yo-yo dieted. I have done this, I've done that. I mean, she just went on, her hair has fallen out. She has tried everything. And so we just went on a whole process. It's a journey, and it's just a journey when you start working with a coach on, especially when there's metabolism repair involved. It was so eye-opening for her to understand how she had done it wrong for so many years, and it was so difficult for her to reach her what she needed for calories during the day, because she was so used to basically her body being in starvation mode. Your body gets used to it. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to answer that question, because some people are overeating, some people are undereating, and it's what are their goals, what's going on with their metabolism. I know what my calories are, but I don't even want to say it out loud because they're not going to be somebody else's calories. But I would say maybe a barometer, and also their activity level. You know, if somebody's training for a marathon, they're going to need more calories than someone who walks for 3 miles a day. You know what I'm saying? So I would say somewhere between, 1,450, 1,500 to 1,800, even more than that.
Well, I learned a while back, a long time ago, that basic amount of calories for a lady is 8 calories per pound of body weight. So if they weigh 120 pounds, they should be taking in a minimum of 1,000 calories a day just for basic functions. And a man is 10 calories per pound body weight. So if you're a 200-pound guy, just to support the basic functions of life without any activity or anything, you would take in 2,000 calories a day just to exist.
Yeah. So, it's called your BMR.
Yeah.
And so to know what that is, and to understand that when you're barely hitting your calories for that, and that's what your norm is, you are wrecking your metabolism. It is causing all sorts of havoc. And if you find that, you know what, you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh wait, I think maybe I might be undereating, track your food. You can get MyFitnessPal. There's other apps. It's free, but just track exactly what you're eating, and you can figure it out. But here's the thing: you're going to lack focus, mental cognition, energy. You're depleting your body. There's all sorts of problems with that, but there's that problem, but then most people are over consuming calories.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. It just depends. I've done both. I've actually been in both categories there. Okay, let's move on. The next thing, we're just, again, trying to keep this as simple as possible. Next step, so we're going to prioritize protein. Number 2, we're going to pound the water. And not just water, electrolyte water. You can throw mineral salts in your water. We have a supplement that we enjoy. and it's LMNT. But it is important to get the minerals in your water. If you're just drinking a ton of water, it can actually dehydrate you. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
But here's the thing. If you are properly hydrated, so that's what I want to call it, is just being properly hydrated, it's going to improve your mental clarity, your cognition. It'll help you maintain focus. It'll also stabilize your energy and your mood. It can help stabilize your energy and your mood. So this is there was an interesting study that this group drank 1.5 liters of water before each meal. And they did that for 6 months.
It's a lot of water, isn't it?
It's a lot of water. Pound the water. But knock back some water before you have your meal. But anyway, they lost weight consistently and kept it off.
Just from drinking the water.
Just from drinking the water. It fills you up a little bit. A lot of it. So we know to drink water. You know to drink water. Add some electrolytes to it. I've got a link actually for those LMNT electrolytes. They're delicious. I'll throw them in the show notes. But make sure that you're properly hydrated, especially as we're getting into the summer months. The more you sweat, the more hydration that you need. Okay. Anything you want to add on that, sir?
No, I think those are good points.
Okay. The last thing that I'm finding is giving my clients and myself results. And I'm going to talk about it just a little bit here, but number 3 is dive into your data. When you actually know your numbers and you have clarity around what your goals are, it's going to be easier and more motivating to reach them. So there's several things, and I just want to I'm going to throw a bunch of things at you, and I'll go back and add these things in the show notes. But when I'm working with a client, we get crystal clear on several things. So they are crystal clear on what they need to do. So we can move that needle forward in the right way. So here's a couple of things. Data. Your macros.
What are macros?
Your macronutrients. How much protein do you need? Oh, listen. You're so full of crap. How much protein do you need? How many fats do you need? How many carbs do you need? So many of us have been scared to death of carbohydrates, or, oh my gosh, I can't eat fats. But when you get in touch with what should your caloric intake be for a day, what should your macronutrients be, and what I have learned is that number is going to vary for each of us, and it's not that you can go online and plug numbers into there's different things that you can use. I think for basic starts, just try that. You can actually pull it up online and you can put in your information, input it, and they'll give you macronutrients. There's a better way to do that, and that's going to require way more information and health history and things like that. All of that matters. Okay, so macronutrients.
Well, I think macronutrients are important. I think people get scared of having to count them and track them, but I would encourage you that if you've tracked them for a period of time, it becomes just normal. You'll know that a piece of fish that's 4 ounces has a certain amount of protein in it. A piece of steak that's 6 ounces has a certain amount of protein in it. You just kind of get used to it. What's for you, for what's my macronutrients and what's Amy's are different. You just kind of get used to what's yours after you've tracked it for a period of time. So it does get easier. It's not so scary.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad you brought that up. Also, it's just a tool. And what my clients have learned is that it was a powerful tool. One lady said, she goes, you know what? I'm going to count macros. This works so well for me. And now I understand why I've screwed up my metabolism so much. And then I've had some clients that work with me for 12 weeks, and they're like, I get it. But the first 4 weeks, the first 5 weeks, it's just a process. And it's not about it being perfect, but it helps you understand and get a proper relationship with your food. And here's the thing. If you just focused on trying to get the right amount of calorie, like hit your calories and your protein goals, usually things kind of balance out at that point. If you can hit those two. So focus on that. Keep it simple. Here's the other thing. Hire a coach. I hired a coach to help me with this. And I found that it was so important to get back to understanding for midlife, for fat loss, for weight loss, for getting things under control, for empowerment of what did this midlife body need, because what I did 5 years ago was no longer working for me. And so understanding how to do that and incorporate that in an integrative approach is really, really important. So I created an umbrella to where I have people on my team that help with the macronutrients at a much more sophisticated and higher level, and adjust them along the way as the client is progressing. And it works amazingly. It absolutely is it's almost magic when you start to figure that piece out, but then it can become intuitive.
I think so. I think having a coach is a really good thing. It's hard to hold yourself accountable and make the adjustments honestly without someone helping you with it.
100%. 100%. So I completely agree. In fact, this is really interesting. I have a new client that just started with me. So I have a fat loss. I ended up creating a midlife fat loss program because I couldn't find one that worked. I couldn't find one that had what I felt like were the important components for midlife to figure out what was going on. Again, you have to consider your hormones. You have to consider your stress levels, your sleeping habits, your routines, your nutrition. All of these things are so important, and they have to be taken into consideration. And I created a program. So if you're interested, if you're like, oh my gosh, Amy, I need some help. This is exactly what I need. I'll drop a link in below where you can book a call with me, or just reach out to me on DMs and we can have a conversation. But I have a client who just started, and so I take a week to onboard. We go through, I just have a whole process that I use to get them ready so they're set up for success. I believe that you have to create strategies and systems in place for success. That is mindset, but it's also tools where you can track and tweak. Okay. So one client, she just started. The first week is prep week, just getting ready. I'm like, don't worry about anything, but just, do this little checklist. And then we're going to start next week. She was like, I worked out 4 times this week. I'm so proud of myself. I was like, well, you go, girl. Like, you didn't even have to do that. She said, you know what? I've been trying to do that all year long. It is May and I haven't done it. And I did it this week. She was so proud of herself. And why? She hired a coach. I'm not even holding her accountable yet. There's something about knowing that, hey, I've made this investment in myself. Now I'm actually going to hold myself to a higher standard. So,
because you're paying for it?
Because you're paying for it, and you're really also, when it's that idea that I'm worth this, I value this more. It's kind of like, having something that's given to you or something that you've worked really hard for and you've saved your money for a long time and you pay for it. There's more pride in that second one, right?
Yes.
So same thing here. So a couple of other places where I think it's really important that it's data, like tracking your data, diving into your data, is knowing what you weigh. I mean, that sounds like common sense. However, has there ever been a time in your life where you're like, I don't want to know that. I am not stepping on that dang scale. Ain't no way. I know I have. It's like I avoid the scale because I don't want to know what the number is.
I get on it all the time. I don't care.
Yes, I know you do. You have a healthy relationship with the scale. But sometimes I've been in a place before where I didn't want to know. And then finally, when I did step on the scale, it was like 10 pounds heavier than what it used to be. And that just knowing what your number is doesn't define you. And if you've had a really bad relationship with the scale before, which I have, I was obsessed. There was a time in my life, oh my gosh, I'm not even kidding you. I would weigh 10 or 20 times a day.
Well, how often should you weigh? Should you weigh every day, every week, every month? Is there one that's best than the others?
Well, here's my opinion on this.
Okay.
If you have a healthy relationship with the scale, like it's just the numbers, it just is what it is. The numbers are going to go up and down. They will go up and down. The goal is to have the trajectory going down, but you're going to vary, pound to 2 pounds, even 4 pounds from day to day, depending on how many carbs you had the night before, or maybe even the stress levels the day before. So if you can be okay with that, I do recommend actually stepping on the scale daily. It actually starts to hold you accountable.
I agree.
And then you also get a relationship of, oh, what the heck? The scale went up 3 pounds? Oh, wait a minute. We went to Soulshine and had pizza last night, or
had crumble cookies at the office.
Oh, yeah. And you know what?
And there's nothing wrong with Soulshine and crumble cookies.
No, nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Not downing them.
Not at all. Not at all. But you do start to get a better understanding where your numbers lie. And a lot of women, myself, Randy included,
I'm not a woman.
Well, he's not a woman at all. I'm not a woman.
No plans to be. Nothing to change.
Okay. So one of the things that we both have been, and this is just a little bit difficult, especially really, I think, an empty nest, is a roller coaster of tightening it up. Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday, like, oh, I'm on my A game, baby. And then the weekend is like, woo! It's not good.
Mondays are not good on the scale.
Yeah. And so I found myself in this cycle of losing 4 or 5 pounds during the week and gaining it all back every weekend, losing it during the week and then gaining it on the weekends, which is not the cycle that I want to be on. And if that's you too, the scale and the relationship to the scale helped me overcome that and get better at that. Okay. A couple of other things that are really, really helpful is understanding what is your body fat percentage and understanding what muscle mass do you have. There are some really great scales that are relatively inexpensive that keep up with this data, because sometimes you can be losing fat and the scale's not moving as quickly as you feel, and that can feel discouraging. But when you actually have those numbers, that data, where you can see and track along with your circumference measurements. So I'm going to put in the show notes here. Actually, a client introduced me to this particular brand and this electronic circumference measurement. So cool. So let me tell you this real quick, and then we're going to wrap up this podcast. Is this? I had 2 other new coaching clients that started with me. And again, I start with a prep week, and then we start week 1, and we measure data. That's how we can track and tweak. This is how you can course correct quicker and get quicker results. Okay, this is super interesting. So because we are watching the scale and we're also doing circumference measurements and we're focusing on getting that nutrition dialed in properly, 1 week in, listen to this. Now, this is so exciting. I just want to encourage you with this. 1 week in, because we had this data, one client lost 2 pounds. Healthy fat loss, healthy weight loss is 1 to 2 pounds a week. Okay. Now, she was sick and wasn't able to exercise. And so that was kind of frustrating to her. But she was on it with her nutrition, starting to focus on that and really working on that. She goes, check my measurements. I think, she says, I feel different. Check my measurements. I did her circumference measurement and I did she lost 5 inches in 1 week, which is crazy. And then another client, same thing, 1 week in, and has all the circumference measurements. She had been traveling that week, but really focusing on her nutrition, just the nutrition part, wasn't able to exercise. She lost 8 inches. 8 inches! Do you know how motivating that is when you see those numbers go down? Her scale didn't move too much yet because she'd been traveling. Lots of times when you travel, it's difficult. There's like extra water weight and stuff. So she's going to get back to me on those measurements. But the more you're keeping up with that, it is so helpful. So weighing, I would say daily if you have a healthy relationship. If not, once a week, I would pick a good day. For me, Friday would be a good day. Monday's not such a great day, especially if you indulge on the weekends, which I encourage you to really focus on eating whole foods, real foods, unprocessed foods, unrefined foods, ditching sugar out of your diet. 90% of the time, eat real food. Excuse me. I think I said that wrong. 90% of the time, eat
real food.
Yeah,
yes.
10% of the time, enjoy your life. You don't, it's not about restriction, but it is about your overall health, increasing that health span. So,
I want to jump in here with something. We've talked about protein, we've talked about calories, we've talked about water, we've talked about data, and we've talked about coaching. Is there any place in your nutritional plan for supplementation? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that needs its own podcast. I do believe that we need proper supplementation because we can't get everything we need from our food. And I will list a couple of supplements that I recommend in these show notes, but I absolutely think we just need to come back and do just another podcast on our favorite supplements that we use. And one of the things that I really love with this coaching that I use is with some functional labs that I have, you're able to actually get customized minerals and vitamins for your biology. That's amazing. That is so exciting. And I also know that there's some racket and some money being made on supplements, and I have spent some money. I've wasted money.
We've tried a lot of them.
We've tried a lot of them over the years. So now I'm very cautious and careful before I will recommend a supplement. So maybe we can come back next week and talk about supplementation.
Okay. I think so. One thing I want to encourage everybody is we talk a lot about, Amy does, particularly about midlife, but I read an article recently that shows people in their 20s aren't really worried about any of this stuff because it doesn't matter what they eat or how much they exercise. And then in the 30s, people are raising families, they're starting careers, so they're not focusing in on it. And when they're in their 40s, they start thinking about this. Then when they get in their 50s and they're empty nesters, they start looking at their health span and their lifespan. They say, oh my gosh, I've got to do something about this. But I would just encourage you that all of these principles Amy's talking about can be implemented at any point in your life. You don't have to wait until you're a midlifer or a 60-year-old like me. The sooner you start with this, just like the sooner you start saving money, the better off you're going to be when you're further down the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so let's just wrap up with this. This is I just want to encourage you to take steps forward now. Get into action now. If you just implemented one of these ideas right now, in fact, I want to encourage you, just pick one. And hang on, are you getting up and walking away?
No.
Okay, yes, you are. This is so funny. So
wrapping it up.
I am wrapping it up. We're sitting here talking about this podcast. He's done this on the last two. He just gets up when his part's over. He walks away. I just called you out on it, didn't I?
I don't know that I'm walking away. I'm moving around. I'm moving my body.
Okay. But anyway, I want to encourage you, don't get overwhelmed. Pick one thing. And with this nutrition piece, if I were to pick one thing, again, prioritize protein. And again, if you need assistance, help, support, reach out. I am happy to share with you the reason why my clients are they're having success. There is something really powerful just about the expert support and guidance, someone who knows what they're talking about and helping you using data. And then also the accountability piece. Actually, someone holding you accountable oftentimes is just what we need. And most of the clients that I work with through this 12 weeks, after 12 weeks, they're empowered. They're good to go on their own. Sometimes we just need a reset, a reboot, a little recalibration, a kick in the booty. And my goal is just to help you get that so you can do it on your own. So you can be successful with tools and strategies to help you along your journey. So all of these are great ideas. I'm gonna put in the show notes some of these, the scale that I'm talking about, the protein powder that I recommend, the LMNT. Was there something else? I feel like there was one other thing I talked about. Oh, I do have a free fat loss over 40 meal plan. I'll throw that in here too. So anyhow, all right. Well, we will be back next week continuing this amazing conversation. And okay, so as I'm saying goodbye, Randy's watching the ball game. Are you watching a ball game on your phone?
No.
Who's playing?
I'm doing research on next week's podcast.
Who's playing?
I'm not watching a ball game.
You are too.
I'm watching Mississippi State and Alabama.
All right, y'all. See you next time. Bye. Girlfriend, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm so honored you come back every week and that you share the Fit Soul podcast with your friends and family. Every time you share my podcast on Instagram or Facebook, I do a little happy dance. Make sure you subscribe to the Fit Soul podcast where you'll never miss an episode. You can go to Podcast, Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode release. And just know, I truly love bringing you excellent content and great guests to provide you motivation and faith inspiration to help you walk worthy. And one of the ways you can help me is to go and leave the Fit Soul podcast a review. If you have just a moment, would you please go over and leave a review for the Fit Soul podcast? Thank you again. I love you. And here is your reminder. You are worthy. Until next time. Bye-bye.